Hi, everybody. This is Bobby Carlton. I am the publisher and editor-in-chief of Lioness Magazine. I'm also an entrepreneur just like you, and I'm also the founder of Innovation Women. Today, I am here speaking to Ada Slivinski from Talk Shop, and she did something amazing. She flipped the switch, and I'm going to ask her to tell us all about that. But first, I'm going to ask her if she can introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Bobby. So I'm Ada. I am VP at Talk Shop Media. So we're a full service integrated communications agency headquartered out of Vancouver, BC, but operating all throughout North America. So we have offices across Canada and the US. And before doing what I do now, I ran a smaller PR agency called Jam PR. And about 2 years ago, we sold that to Talk Shop, and I came on board as a part of that acquisition.
Fantastic. And I believe that this particular conversation that we're getting into was at the Toast Summit. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So it was a summit for primarily women in technology that takes place in Calgary. So this was the second one. We went as part of Talk Shop last year for the inaugural first summit last year, and this year we're able to take part in a bit of a bigger, better way. And the interesting thing about this conference is it's so different from most of the tech conferences that you will go to, where you'll see those tech bros. There's a lot of men in the audience. Women often feel like they're a little bit of the odd woman out. Whereas this one, it was truly 90% women in the room, and men actually had to pay a little bit extra. They had a little bit of a tax, because we know how men make more money on the dollar than women do. And this conference was kind of strategically priced to reflect that as well.
For once, we didn't have to pay the pink tax, right?
Exactly.
And for anybody who doesn't know what the pink tax is, it is a little bit of an increase in the price for anything colored pink. So, for the biggest example I can always think of is women's razors. They are often so much more expensive than men's razors, and often they are pretty much the exact same product, except one's pink and one is blue. So, welcome to the pink tax, lady.
Yeah. Well, and also when we look at salaries and across technology, but truly across a lot of industries, women are making often 79 cents on the dollar to what men in the same role, same industry are making. So throughout the conference itself, there were so many nice little nods and cheeky ways to get people thinking about those broader issues. And yes, getting men to pay a little bit more, maybe a bit of a gimmick, got some headlines, got some people talking, but really at the core of it, it's highlighting an important and truly devastating issue.
All right, so we are going to go back and we are going to talk specifically about the script that you flipped and your role in this. And tell us about this particular panel that you were chairing, moderating.
Yes. So I was moderating, and we did a bit of a test run of this in Vancouver. So April Hickey, who's the co-founder and CEO of Toast, did this panel for the first time in Vancouver, and Talk Shop actually sponsored and partnered with her on this. And the concept was getting men in a room and asking them the same gendered questions that women in whatever field often get asked. So they were asked things like, how do you balance it all? How do you manage your sleep and your skincare routine on top of being a founder? How do you plan your family life and make sure you have dinner on the table? And she asked those questions to a group of men. It was a smaller group at kind of a little tech gathering in Vancouver. And this year we took it on the bigger stage at the Toast Summit. So there was close to 500 people in the room, again, mostly women. And we asked men in technology the questions that women often get asked. And if you've been attending any women in tech, women in real estate, women in whatever industry panel. These questions are super familiar. But what happens when we ask men these same questions is all of a sudden we see how ridiculous it is, how insane to be asking such personal questions that are really irrelevant to the actual expertise and the reason why these men are on the stage. So that discomfort was truly felt in the room by those on stage, and those in the audience as well.
All right. So let's talk about the guys. All right. Who answered the call and how did you select these particular guys?
Yeah. So full credit to April from Toast. These are a lot of her contacts and friends. And the reason they said yes was because April asked. So she certainly has a lot of sway in the tech community in Calgary and beyond. So we had Tate Hackert from Zayzoon, which is a fintech startup. Kevin Kilman from Humi, which is actually a client of ours at TalkShop. Court Ellington is an MLA, and Derek Armstrong from Calgary Economic Development. So men participating in the tech scene, really well known in the sector. And the most frustrating thing for me, I would say, in prepping for the panel was looking at all the questions that I wanted to ask these men. And if you look at Tate's history and background of founding Zayzoon, he actually got the company started by lending out $250,000 of his own money on Craigslist and realizing the need for it. So those were the places that I wanted to take the conversation and wanted to ask the questions, but there wasn't time or space because I had to ask them about their work-life balance. I had to ask them about, how they're maintaining their, boss boy image while they're actually doing the work of founding a business. And it made me realize how many women have gotten to the place that they're on that stage and they should be asked these really interesting questions that can add so much value to the discourse and to the community, but instead they're asked about their hair care routine.
And how did they answer about their hair care?
Well, it's funny. I got a lot of like, is that a serious question?
Oh,
I think that they realized, wow, this feels so irrelevant. This feels so strange. So for a large part, most of the men were able to kind of like block and kind of navigate around, and we got a lot of kind of more serious conversation happening on that panel as well. But it was really just to go through that exercise and have them answer. Oh, I never thought about how my family plans would factor into how far I'm able to push this company. I never thought about, would I be not considered for a promotion because I have an engagement ring on my finger? What that looks like for a man was very different. So I'd say that like the most compelling feeling was this discomfort of the men in the room, in the panel. Like you could even see some of them starting to turn red, some of them just kind of like shrinking into themselves a little bit because it's an uncomfortable situation to be asked some of these questions.
Now I'm curious, after the panel or toward the end of the panel, did they themselves talk about learning anything from the experience?
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely asked, at the end, what did you learn? And what are you committed to do to change some of this discrimination in your own life going forward? And the men, a lot of them actually said, into this room, I felt like an outsider. And they took a lot of that experience and feeling and wondered, is that what women feel? Getting into some of these spaces, pitching to investors. If you're looking across the table at a room of people who you're asking to invest money into your company and they don't look like you. Having men be in that perspective that women in technology are often in shifted their perspective. And then as far as the commitment, I think it was just truly the awareness and calling women in and asking themselves when they need to stop asking questions that are irrelevant, and stepping in and feeling like it's okay to step in and stop a line of questioning that is really personal and irrelevant.
I have to ask, how did you personally prep for this panel?
Um, I think a lot of the prep truly happened in witnessing how women's panels go and sitting in the audience and feeling that discomfort and frustration. So that was why I think April asked me to moderate, because she'd been on the receiving end of many frustrated phone calls from me, kind of calling this out. But other than that, just like reading up on some of the stats that I know are quite familiar to a lot of us, of what the percentages of VC funding that goes to women, 1.8%. When you look at women of color, 0.4%. Women of color getting funding for tech ventures that they've started. So that statistical kind of like snapshot was the grounding for the conversation. And then there were so many questions that I really wanted to ask and wanted to dive into. But it was like, imagine this was a room of women and they were asked the questions that women are often asked. So that was kind of the script and the framework that we stuck to.
As an entrepreneur, as a founder, I will fully admit that there are times that I have been asked to be on the women in fill in the blank industry panel. And every time this comes up, I think about it very deeply, and I have to make decisions based on things like, I'm not going to get another chance to be on this particular stage at this particular conference unless I say yes to this. I'm not going to get the chance in this panel to talk about my company at all. Do I make this decision? Have you ever personally been in that role before, where you were invited to be on one of these women in X industry panels? And how did you approach that?
So yes, I've sat on a few of those panels in the past. And I think truthfully, my perspective has changed over the past 5-10 years. When I was starting out in the industry, I felt this as a woman to balance it all, as they say, right? So I was happy to talk about, I made lunch for my kids and I got, my business off the ground and things are going and happening. And then all of a sudden, I felt frustrated that this was still the line of questioning. Like, I'm still making the same thing for lunch for my kids and, everyone's still alive, but business now has grown. I've been able to sell and join a bigger agency. And there's so much more happening in terms of innovation, in terms of new industries, in terms of technology that we're leveraging. And I wanted to be asked about that. So I think as that natural shift happened, the opportunities started to split and shift. And now I don't know that I would say no to being on a panel that was women in whatever industry. But I would certainly steer the conversation in a bit of a different direction. So I don't know if they would want me on at this point. But even naming the panel "Men in Tech" was jarring for some. Like, what do you mean men in tech? It's just tech. It's just tech found. Well, why isn't it the same for women? So just causing us to stop and look at some of this discrimination that's really inherent in society that we often don't even think about unless it's flipped in our face.
Yeah. And I think there is a conversation to be had with event managers. Some come to the table with a women in X industry from a place of wanting to help, from a place of, love in their heart and wanting to support. But are there other ways that they could do that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, truly, I think inviting women to speak about their expertise, right? They're leaders in whatever industry it is, whether it's real estate development or technology or natural resources. They've often achieved the level that they're at professionally, um, because they're really good at what they do and they have great ideas to bring to the table. So, asking them about that, about what they see, for the future of their industry, what innovation they've seen, what's a marker of success, um, and opening up the conversation in that direction, and not everything needs to get so personal.
So do you think the women in fill in the blank industry panels are done? Is their time past, or is there still a place for them?
That's a good question. I think we're close to coming to the end of this being done for this kind of gendered conversation. I mean, and I think about PR as the industry that I'm in, and it's truly right now primarily women in PR. So maybe there's a bit of a room for a men in PR panel on that side to flip the script a little way.
All right. And along those same lines, if we are looking at the women in XYZ industry panel, we are looking at often that is the way to help balance out the speaking slates at conferences and events, because we still have two-thirds of all conference speakers being men.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's still a grave imbalance, as you pointed out earlier, in funding. So, are these kinds of panels the thing that might help get more women on stage?
I mean, I think there's almost a deeper root to the problem there of, we talked about the stats of women receiving funding. You look at women founding companies, you look at women in positions of leadership. CEOs are often men, larger companies. So those are the representatives who are often called upon for these panels. So if we want to really change the makeup of the panels, maybe we need to look back and change the makeup of who's running some of these bigger companies across North America.
Okay. Any last words of advice for event managers, for women who get asked to be on these panels, and or for the men who are supporting them?
I mean, I think maybe there's a time for shutting down some of those irrelevant questions, right? If anyone is on a panel and they're asked something that's not relevant to their professional life or not relevant to the reason they were asked to be on there, it's okay to say, that's off the table, or that's not why I was asked to be here today. And especially, up in Canada, we are so polite and we are so used to just like going along with whatever is asked, but there certainly is no shame in keeping the conversation focused on what you're really able to bring to the table.
Yeah, I often give people advice, and it's something along the lines of ask a question back. Is that really relevant to why we're here today? Or why would you ask that?
Yeah,
Put the
yeah,
ball back in their court.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's actually one I keep in my back pocket. Why would you ask me that?
Why? Why? And that's why we're here today. So thank you again for joining us. And thank you all, readers of Lioness Magazine, for joining in these incredibly important conversations for female entrepreneurs. We are, as always, here to provide inspiration and insight to our women entrepreneurs. Thanks again, folks. Take care. Bye bye.